Well, hello friends, I hope you all will be fine. Today I am going to touch the second chapter of economics, which is the factors of production. This is the second chapter according to O levels, and for A levels this is a part of the first unit. In my last lecture we touched the topic of the economic problem. I described you what the economic problem is, and we somewhat touched the main themes, or you can say the main ideas of factors of production. Today we are going to deal with factors of production in great detail. There are three major objectives of today's lecture. First, I am going to describe each factor of production. Second, I am going to tell you the geographical and occupational mobility of each factor. And third, and I think the most important part, is the return on earnings from each of the factor. Before we start, I am going to tell you about the basic definitions of these words that I just told you. What are factors of production? Well, factors of production are the economic resources that are used in the production of products, of goods and services. Here there are two parts of the definition that you must understand. First, these are economic resources, which means that they have economic value. By economic value, I mean that they have any monetary term can measure them. Secondly, they are used in production. If they are not used in production, they are not economic resources and they are not factors of production. So again, I will repeat the definition. These are the economic resources that are used in production. Secondly, I said that I am going to describe the geographical and occupational mobility of each of the factor. Coming to the definition of geographical mobility. Geographical means by the means of area, by the means of geography. And mobility means the ability to move. So simply the definition of geographical mobility is the capability of something to move or change places or be used in another place. Formally, we can say that geographical mobility is the ability of an object, or specifically an economic resource, a factor of production, to change its place of use. Secondly, I said that I will tell you about the occupational mobility of each factor. By occupational mobility, I mean that occupational means the way it is used. So, occupational mobility means that it is the capability of something to change its use. And third, I told you that we are going to understand the earnings or the return from each factor. By earnings or return, I mean that what are the earnings from each factor when they are invested in production. I hope that these definitions are clear, so we can move on to the formal introduction of each of the following four factors of production. The first factor of production is land. In my last lecture, I told you that land is anything that is given by the nature and it is used in production. Simply stating, we can say that these are the gifts of nature that are used in production. Now, by gifts of nature, I mean that it is any natural resource that has not been affected by human activity. To make you understand this, I can say that it is an economic resource that has been provided by nature in any form. So basically, land is the land itself. Moreover, it includes what is found on the land naturally. For example, forests, mountains, rivers, sea, ocean, these are all land. And even more, the most important part that many students miss is that land also includes the natural resources found in these things. For example, the animals that are found in forest are actually a part of land. At the same time, the fish that is found naturally in the rivers is a part of land. And even more, the mineral resources that are extracted from the earth, these are actually a part of land until and unless they are extracted. For example, the coal, oil, natural gas that is deep inside the surface, somewhere under the seas, deep blue seas, it is actually a part of land. This is a major mistake in papers. You have to understand that land includes these things. If you don't include them, you are making a mistake and you could cost about 2 to 3 marks in your MCQs paper. This is a paper that's compulsory in both O&A levels, so make it sure that you should be clear about what land is. Coming to the geographical and occupational mobility of land. Land is basically geographically immobile. It cannot be changed from one place to another. For example, it is impossible to move the southern hemisphere to the place of northern hemisphere. Can you? No, you can't, and even I can't. So land is actually geographically immobile. Though there are some times that land could become geographically mobile. If I tell you like this, the rivers that change their course are actually a mobility of land. But it is a rare occurrence, and it is an occurrence that can occur over many years, and at the same time it is a natural process. So humans can basically not change the course of land. Can land be added? This is a question that was asked in May, June 2014 if I am not wrong. And many students gave a wrong answer, including myself. So let me make it clear, yes, there is one example of where land can be added. This is where land is increased by reclamation. For example, soil reclamation, land reclamation, these are all parts of reclamation of land. Moving on, the next part is that what is the, I forgot. One more thing that you should remember here is the occupational mobility of land. Is land occupationally mobile? Ask this question yourself. Yes, it is occupationally mobile. For example, a farmer who uses land to plant crops could use the same land for aquaculture, or at the same time he could use that land for grazing of animals. Even when he is doing it only for agriculture, if he is planting rice this season, he could plant barley oak the next season. So actually land is occupationally mobile. When coming to the earnings of land, a land can earn you rent. You should always remember that you should not confuse the resources with land when making its earnings. The forests, the minerals, these are all earning sources, but when you are talking about the basic earning of land, it is rent. When you are asked about the definition of land in paper, you would mention these things because mostly the definition is of 4 marks. You would mention that land is the gifts of nature that are available in production. It is geographically usually immobile, it is occupationally usually mobile, and at the same time land could be added by reclamation, it could be lost by soil erosion, and you can even include the sentence that land earns you rent. I hope that land is clear. Moving on, the next part is capital. Capital is any human made input that is used in production. Here I use the word human made. You should understand that capital is actually a product that has been developed by humans that is used in further production. Here there is a difference between capital products, capital goods, and consumer products or consumer goods. Capital goods are those goods that have been produced to help in further production. They are not used for the satisfaction of the owner. Whereas the consumer goods are the goods that are actually provided for the satisfaction of the person who consumes them. Here there are 2 things that you should bear in mind. What is the difference between a customer and a consumer? A customer is someone who buys a product. He is not necessarily the consumer of the product. At the same time, a consumer is someone who uses the product. He is the end user, but it is not necessary that he is the customer himself. I could make this point clear to you in one easy example. Think of the time when you were a small boy. Your father would go out to buy diapers for you. That's a common saying, please don't take it, no offense. So when you would buy the diapers, he is the customer of the product. He is buying it from himself. By paying for it, he is the customer, but he is not using the product, so he is not the consumer. On the other hand, you were not buying the product yourself, but you were using it, so you were the consumer. Here there is a distinct feature between both customers and consumers. However, if you try to change it into one example, you could say that you go to a shop and you buy an ice cream, or even if you buy a chocolate. Here I would give a shout out to my best friend. His favorite chocolate is I don't know what. So for example, he bought dairy milk. So the chocolate that he bought is actually making him a customer, while if he eats the chocolate himself, he becomes a consumer. So here he is the person who goes and buys this is actually the consumer and the customer at the same time. The second difference that you should bear in mind is what is the difference between a capital good and a consumer good. A capital good is produced for helping in further production, aiding in further production, while a consumer good is produced for the satisfaction of the owner. I could give you an example to make this clear. If I buy a car and it is for my personal ride, it is a consumer good, it is giving me satisfaction. However, if you buy a car or if I buy a car and I use it to drive as a taxi, here it is not providing me satisfaction, it is working as a provider of service. So you can understand that where a product is used to provide a further product or a service, it is a capital good. Whereas the same product, if it is used by the person himself for his personal satisfaction, it is a consumer good. If I can tell you this in one more way. You buy a computer and you play computer games on it. It is giving you satisfaction, so it is actually a consumer good. While if the same computer is used in a bank to process checks, it is a customer good, or it is a customer good or a capital good. I hope that it's clear. Now moving on, capital is any human made input that is used in production. So it could include offices, factories, and even monetary induction. Now here you should make clear there are two types of capital: financial capital and economic capital. In economic capital we take things, for example, offices, factories, which have a material existence. On the other hand, the monetary capital is basically a term of business, and you should not combine it with the term of economics, because economics includes the financial capital in it. It includes the monetary investment, for example, the cash you invest, the checks you give, the initial build-up amount. These are all part of the financial capital. Coming to the geographical and occupational mobility of capital. The geographical mobility of capital is that some forms of capital is extremely geographically mobile. For example, a van that is used here in my hometown Bahawalpur can also be used in another area in Lahore, in Islamabad, or even out of the country. While an office that is built in Bahawalpur will remain in Bahawalpur, it is not geographically mobile. So in the case of capital, you are actually going to judge the type of capital product that is being provided, and then you will judge that is it geographically mobile or not. Ask your mind, it will help you. When coming to the occupational mobility of capital, almost all types of capital is occupationally mobile to a greater extent, but if you narrow the choices, it will become occupationally immobile. For example, a printer that was being used to print checks could be used to print letters in another department, so it is occupationally mobile on a wider extent. But coming to the narrower extent, it would always in the end print. So if you narrow down the choices, capital becomes immobile in terms of occupation. But if you are widen your sense, then capital is basically occupationally mobile. What is the reward of capital? Just cram the word that it is interest. No need to think that are you earning interest? Don't think about it. Paper asks you what is the earning of capital. Make sure that you write interest. So land and capital is done. Next is labor. You should understand that labor and enterprise are two different things. Labor is the human efforts, both mental and physical, that are used in production. Now you should understand that labor is of two types. There is manual labor and there is non-manual labor, or the labor that we call that is non-manual jobs. The manual labor usually does physical jobs, while non-manual labor is mostly involved in mental jobs. Here you should understand that labor is any human input that is from his body himself. So a manager being a part of enterprise is also a part of labor. Now if I talk about the geographical and occupational mobility of labor, labor is geographically mobile. A person who is working here could also work in another area. Can he? Well, yes, I can work. Mostly everyone can work. So it is geographically mobile, and occupationally labor is mobile depending on its qualification, education and experience. For example, I have appeared in many subjects and I am able to give you lectures for these subjects. At the same time, I have a skill in musical instruments and I do play musical instruments and I upload videos even. But another person at the same time who has given many papers and can give lectures but does not have skills of piano or guitar can never give you tutorials. So occupational mobility of labor is dependent on their education, qualification and experience. Without that, it is occupationally immobile. And there is another factor that could be asked in exams. Well, it was asked in my exam and I was like, oh my god. So you should remember that in case of labor, there is one chance that labor could become immobile due to lack of information. For example, if a person is not told or does not have access to the things to be told about different opportunities for labor, he is geographically and occupationally immobile. There is one question that is common occurrence in exams, and it even came in this year in this May-June session. The question was included in the O-levels paper. The question was that how to increase labor. There are many ways. You should improve the education of your country, you could improve the qualification levels of your country, you could increase the school leaving age, or better decrease it. Both are capable. You could decrease the school leaving age, you should increase the retirement age of the country, you should try to make your country aged, you should have an aging population, you could increase the economic opportunities for the country. These all things improve labor. And other way of doing it, which is not very desirable, is to increase immigration. This This is a policy that was adopted by Canada about 2 years ago when they had depopulation. They encouraged Asians to come to their country so that they could have increase in their labor and so that they could continue with their industries. That was an example. You could quote it if you don't want. There is no problem in it. So, moving on. What is the earnings of labor? The earnings of labor is wages. Remember that word. Sometimes students confuse themselves between wages and pay, wages and salary. No. Wages is the basic earning of labor. You should remember that. The last is, but not the least, and even not the least, the best part. It is the enterprise. When we are talking about enterprise, there are two things that are formed within the branch of enterprise. One is enterprise itself and second is entrepreneur. Enterprise or entrepreneurship is the risk bearing and decision making ability that forms a business. How does it form a business? You can increase the definition by adding the fact that it combines the other factors of production and makes production possible of products. On the other hand, an entrepreneur is a person who has the risk bearing ability and the decision making ability to combine the factors of production and make produce available. Here you should understand that enterprise is the skill and entrepreneur is the person. I can repeat, enterprise is the skill and entrepreneur is the person or institute. Sometimes students confuse themselves between the person and skill part. You should remember that enterprise is having a S in it in the end, so it gives skill, while entrepreneur is the person himself. When we talked about the geographical and occupational mobility of enterprise, well, it is the most mobile factor. Once there was an MCQ in a paper which asked that which is the most mobile factor. Student made various answers. I don't know the reasons. I sometimes think that what was the logic behind it, and then I ask myself, there's no logic. So enterprise is basically the most mobile factor because you can give reasons for it. Geographically, a person who has succeeded in making a business here is most probable to succeed in another area too. And occupationally, a person who has invested in, for example, watches could also invest in clocks because he has the same experience. So occupationally and geographically, enterprise or entrepreneurs are the most mobile factors. What is the earning or what is the reward of enterprise is profit. Never confuse enterprise reward with labor's reward. Enterprise reward is profit while labor's reward is wages. This is the detailed guideline of the factors of production chapter. I hope that you understood it. I would like your constructive feedback because it would help me to improve myself in helping you people. Because in the end it is for the betterment of you people, and I really feel that someone who benefits from me would inshallah become or be able to score better grades. I really feel that if Allah has given me knowledge, I should impart it to you people too. I hope that you would leave your constructive comments for my betterment and even in the end your betterment. And I would not continue the lecture because my dear friend has made me 24 messages, and if I don't reply, tomorrow my friendship is going to break and then I would be in depression, and I really feel that my next lecture would not come because he would kill me. No, kill me. He would murder me, assassinate me, he would ridicule me to the best of his limits. So dear friend, I am coming. Allah Hafiz, and I hope that inshallah we'll meet soon. Bye.